an instrumental part of Agora worldwide, Agora worldwide, Agora worldwide. Counter economics, Agorist strip, black market click, move a quick flip, can't regulate this. Agorist strip, black market click, move a quick flip, can't regulate this. Agorist,
Agorist,
Agorist, Nexus, Agorist.
This is Brandon with the Agorist Nexus podcast. Got my great co-host Dag. How you doing, Dag?
I'm doing spectacular, dude. How you doing?
Loving it. Loving the new intro song. Can't regulate this.
Yeah.
We've gotten some good
Yeah,
feedback
good.
on that. So
Cool, man. We have an exciting guest tonight. Before we get into it, let's go ahead and give a big shout out to our sponsor, Presearch. Decentralized search engine, no spying, no censorship, earn crypto by using it. Just a really cool project, really cool program. So I definitely recommend everybody, get off the Google machine and switch over to that.
yeah, absolutely. Great search engine. Decentralized, search is just amazing. They get better every day. They've even got dark mode, and you can seamlessly switch between search engines. And then why not get crypto for searching too? So I really love what they're doing over there. And yeah, definitely check them out. Or if you want to support us, you can hit our affiliate link as well. So
Let's introduce our guest, or rather, I'm going to have him introduce himself so we pronounce it correctly. Just go ahead, man.
Hey, this is Etienne de la Boetie2, and that is obviously a pen name, or maybe not so obviously. But the original Etienne de la Boetie2, or original Etienne de la Boetie, was a French political philosopher who wrote in the 16th century, and he was one of the first to expose little tricks and techniques that rulers used, not just to get obedience, but to get fealty and adoration. I describe him as a little bit like Machiavelli, but Machiavelli was like, hire me, and Boetie was exposing that these guys were jerks.
Nice, I love it. I'm a huge fan of Bastiat. For talking about French folk, definitely one of my favorites. So I'd be interested to learn a little more about this dude. So
well, he's
so yeah, man.
So I guess.
Sorry, go ahead.
So he's in my book, and I guess the thing that I'm best known for is writing a book called Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed, where I'm exposing that government was never really designed to protect life, liberty, and property. It was always designed to rob and control populations. And that, writing from a voluntarist standpoint of all human relations should be voluntary, you can never have a legitimate government. And the reason you can't is because if I don't have the right to make up rules for you or take your things or, take your money, then I can't delegate a right I don't have to a representative or to a government to represent me doing something I don't have the right to do. And you can't be bound by a social contract you didn't sign. And if democracy is wrong, if Dag and I can't vote to, rob Brandon, and that would be illegitimate just because we outnumber him, then it doesn't matter if there's 10 of us or 250 million. There's nothing that's going to take something that's inherently immoral and make it moral just because the mob wants to lynch black folks or rob Peter to pay Paul. And so the subtitle of the book is How Intergenerational Organized Crime Runs the Government and the Media. And that's another thing that I'm, exposing is it's been the government and the media working together since the founding of the country, where, now we live under this monopoly media system of 6 companies running hundreds of subsidiaries to give everybody the illusion that there's all these different choices out there. But in reality, they all roll up to 6 corporations, operating as a cartel on the kind of old media side. And then on the new media side, you've got a couple of dozen, maybe 3 dozen, new media, internet search, video sharing sites, social media sites, fact-checking sites, Google, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, Discuss the Comment Engine, Wikipedia, Amazon, Snopes, Meetup, you name it. And they've been, my thesis is they've been funded with unlimited bankster money to consolidate their little section of the information food chain. And those are the companies that have been caught in every single example that I just named, censoring people on the platform that are trying to either expose the illegitimacy of government and the criminality of government, or magnify the voices that are selling the COVID or 9/11 or the bailouts, whatever the scam of the day is. We're going to magnify those voices while we censor, shadow ban, or demonetize the authentic voices of the developing alternative media that are trying to expose the illegitimacy of the system.
Yeah, it was great, and yeah, it's definitely been apparent, if it wasn't already, like this last year, how much the collaboration between government and media has really taken place. And you just look at a doctor with a differing opinion, for instance, than the mainstream narrative. They get silenced or fired or whatever. So it's pretty rough.
Yeah, so it's control of perception on a very, very wide scale. And that control of perception is, human beings are computers, they're supercomputers, right? But the problem with computers is garbage in gets garbage out. And so if you don't have good data and good understanding of what's really going on the planet, you can't make good decisions. And so that control of perception program starts with the mandatory government school. We're going to force you to go to government school, where we're going to raise you up in the ideology of the state, and we're going to teach you that it's legitimate that we get to rob you. And see, because you were born on this side of an imaginary line, you have to pay us money. But if you were born on the other side of the imaginary line, then you'd pay those other guys money. And then the propaganda system, every single channel, it's legitimate that we get to rule you. It's legitimate. And so it's been this control of perception program to give everybody the illusion that government is legitimate, that they actually owe government money, and that the elections aren't rigged. And so I'm exposing it in the book, and I'm doing so in a picture book that has a lot of visualizations. And so if you try and explain to your friends and family that there's 6 monopoly media companies running hundreds of subsidiaries, they may or may not believe you. But if you show them, some of the media ownership charts I have in the book, or the media organizational charts, where you can see how all the reporters and the editors and the publishers are all connected to 3 different organizations, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, and the Trilateral Commission, then all of a sudden you've made something that was invisible to your friends and family now visible. And now it's like, now they can understand how they're selling the COVID, or the next war, or the next, bailout, where they hand trillions of dollars to private banks, private companies, in bailouts and stimulus. And so we're getting robbed, and they're getting away with it because the media is lying, and not just lying to you, but just trying to distract and deceive you. Entertainment, entertainmente, gubernare, government. The root words are gubernare, to govern or control, and mente, the mind. And entertainment is enter. Tain means to hold or possess, and mente
enter
is
the mind.
So
yeah.
We're going to hold it and possess it, so that you never ever see what's really, really going on.
Right on. Yeah, I agree with all that. I'm just waiting for something that you could tell me that I don't agree with, but I don't think that's going to happen. So.
Yeah, it's it's really tough talking to people too, because like you were saying, it's like, man, like with that 15,000 hour indoctrination system, it's just so deep into people, and it's like they can't even like they'll even say like, okay, I know you're familiar with Most Dangerous Superstition. I lent that one to to my mom to read, and like she read it, and she's like, I agree with everything he said. I cannot find anything wrong with the logic in that book, but no, like we have to have government, because otherwise, whatever, the world's going to crumble, and I'm just like, and it's just frustrating, because it's like, you can't even pick apart anything in the book that you disagree with, but they're just like, nope, sorry, I'm still going to vote, and I still think that's what we need,
Well, there's 2 different issues with that. The first issue is, they've slipped government to the population as a religion. And, I carry the book, The Most Dangerous Superstition, at government-scam.com. And that is the second bestseller on the website after my book. And I'm a big fan of Larkin Rose's, and I credit him with putting the final piece in the puzzle for me, which is, it really is a religion. And so, the government and when I say the government, I mean the intergenerational organized crime families that are running the government and running the media. They're slipping government to the population as a religion, but they're not calling it a religion. And so most people accept it into their hearts and into their worldview when they're very, very young. And they don't understand that they've been like chumped and gamed, and that, they're using the holy symbol of the flag. They have the president who is kind of the Pope, the leader of the artificially indoctrinated, tribe of, America, and people want to be part of the tribe and they want to be, part of that. And they're forcing your kids to go to the church school where the priest, the teacher, teaches them about the legitimacy of the system, and from a very, very young age, before they're old enough to, really question the logic or the morality of what they're being told. At the same time, they're having them do the common prayer of the Pledge of Allegiance. They're having them do the sing the hymns of the, Star Spangled Banner and the national anthem. And they'll take them to Washington, D.C., Mecca, where they see that, the Congress, who's the church leadership, and the judges that sit up on high, and they wear, vestments, and they take the kids in middle school on these trips to Washington, D.C., where they take them into the cathedral of the Capitol that looks like the Vatican for a reason, where, the whole building's like oversized, so you feel small and insignificant. And then they take them into the temples along the Potomac, and they show them the deities of, Jefferson and Lincoln, and it's very quiet and it's very, very hush. And then they got another program for the order followers, and that's the police and the military, where they put them into the government, sponsored youth program, just like the Nazis and the Soviets and the East Germans did with their kids. And now the kids are going to get awards. They're going to get Cub Scout adventure loops, and they're going to get Boy Scout merit badges they'll give them a book, Citizenship in the Nation, Citizenship in the World. And they'll teach them, okay, here's how you salute the flag, and here's how you carry the flag, and here's how you fold the flag. And when the flag gets old, we don't throw the flag away because it's a holy thing. We have to bury the flag. And they, and then after, the kids go through Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Explorers, and an Explorer program, that's when they start teaching the kids how to kill. Now we're going to shave their heads. Now we're going to give them guns. Now we're going to take them away on the weekends and during the summer, and we're going to segment them away from, the rest of society, where we can control the information they receive. And we're going to, in the Police Explorer program, we're going to take them on ride-alongs, and we're going to give them a uniform, the single form conformity, and we're going to give them patches and things that differentiate them from others. And we're going to get into the groupthink, and we're going to use subtle psychological techniques that most of the people in the program don't really understand why they're doing it. That's just the way they've always done it. And it's going to produce a taxpayer who's willing to tithe, voluntarily hand over a portion of his income, because he believes it's the holy thing, the right thing, the honorable thing to do, and doesn't ever realize that he's getting chumped and that he's been put through this program. And then on the police and military side, once they've been through Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, JROTC, ROTC, Police Explorers, military explorers, military training, and then police training, after they've had them through all of these different, programs using all of these unethically manipulative techniques on them, boom, 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 you can't reason with them. They're now willing to use violence on peaceful people, either go abroad and murder people in wars of occupation based on lies and manufactured evidence, the Gulf of Tonkin, or the Kuwaiti babies tossed out of incubators, or weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, or whatever the obvious lie of the day is. They're willing to set their morality aside, and they're willing to murder other people. And in the case of the police, they're willing to set their morality aside and use violence on overwhelmingly peaceful people to enforce the commandments, the laws, the commandments of this artificially indoctrinated statist religion. And, it's a cult. It's they've raised population and they've reinforced it through the media propaganda system, where you've got the Department of Defense or the intelligence agencies, and we cover it in the book, Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed. But Hollywood government has been behind over 800 plus movies, 1,000 plus television shows. This is why the government is always the hero, whether it's the CIA agent saving the world from arch terrorists, or whether it's the deputies saving the world from some zombies, or the president of the United States flying fighter jets to save the planet from invading aliens. The government's always the hero, and it's really, every single channel is telling you, oh, it's legitimate that we get to rule you. Everybody's going along with it. Everybody, they're showing you how to behave in court. They're showing you how to behave in police encounters. And most people, monkey see, monkey do. They grow up not understanding that this media system and this indoctrination system is training them to be essentially tax slaves, where they're being tax farmed and having a portion of their income extracted from them, even though the entire system is illegitimate.
Hey guys, quick pause here to tell you about our sponsor, Devault Cryptocurrency. Ticker symbol DVT is a low cap coin with a market cap around 900,000. So there could be room for opportunity here. Not financial advice, but we really like this project.
Yeah, the Devault core wallet is one of the best I've ever seen. Very user friendly, super easy to use with cold staking rewards. So it's like getting interest. They're working on privacy with Terraform, also DeFi to decentralize and replace financial institutions.
So go ahead and check them out over at devault.cc and get you a Devault core wallet today. Also, be sure to check out the show notes to find exchanges that they are traded on. With that said, let's get back to the show.
Yeah, for sure to all that. And it's funny because it's like, when they definitely show police murders is when it's something that, like it's when they can, frame it as being like racially motivated or something, because that just serves to get us, the people angry at each other, and gets arguments going in that direction, so they're not fair when they do report things like that. And then, something that's bugged me, you're talking about the, TV and movies and everything. And I was always a big fan of the X-Files. And that one always bugged me because I'm like, man, like they talk about Operation Northwoods and they bring up a lot of really terrible things that the government has done. But it really just clicked for me when you said that the government is always the hero. Because even in that, when there's like, oh, there's these evil CIA people and these evil, whatever FBI guys, but the hero is still, Mulder and Scully, they're still FBI agents. They're still the good guys, who don't go along with all that other stuff. So that kind of, I don't know, man, that kind of just clicked for me.
Well, not just that, but it's legitimate. So it's always the bad CIA agent. It's always the bad FBI agent, but government is always legitimate. There's no, like the number one thing you're not allowed to talk about, you're not allowed to, in the government school system, is you're never allowed to question the legitimacy of the system itself. Is it legitimate that a minority of the population gets to use violence on overwhelmingly peaceful people and force people to pay money that they earned and saved, and force the population to abide by rules that they get to make? That's never allowed to be even discussed on the nightly news or the news programs, or it's the one thing you're never going to see is an open discussion about the legitimacy of the system at all, even though it's obviously illegitimate on its face. Because if you're using violence on peaceful people and taking their money or forcing them to do things that they don't want when they're not hurting anybody, you're the bad man. You're the criminal. Based in natural law, which is the yardstick and the denominator of morality, that makes you the bad man. That makes you the criminal. But that's something that's never allowed to be discussed on the television. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they definitely stick with the narrative. We talk about this a lot when you see like the same phrase, just suddenly becomes a thing and they're just using it everywhere. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's there for a reason. Can we switch gears just a touch? Would you mind telling us a little bit about the Art of Liberty Foundation? Sure. So I'm in the process of starting a voluntarist think tank, a public policy institute that would be, do the same level of scholarship as a Cato or a Heritage or a Brookings. Would do so from the voluntarist standpoint of government is illegitimate, and would focus a lot of its efforts on exposing the illegitimacy and now what I would call the open criminality of government in DC, but do so with a very, very, high quality of scholarship, reference, work, do it at the same level these other research institutions and, think tanks do. Because right now there's not a voluntarist think tank. There's nobody to represent the voluntarist ideals in the marketplace of ideas. And also, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm an organized crime researcher. And when you take a look at the problem as intergenerational organized crime, well, that becomes the key that unlocks all of the locks and makes sense out of the world that we see in today. And so that's why the Pentagon is missing trillions of dollars. That's why they couldn't find $6 billion in physical cash in Iraq. That's why they're paying $400,000 for F-35 helmets and $14,000 for toilet seats and $35 million for army bases that 3 different generals tried to kill in Afghanistan, but couldn't because somebody wanted to make $35 million, and then they essentially abandoned the base. And so now all of a sudden, we're being robbed. And it's those exorbitant profits that are funding the monopolization of the media. And so when you call it deep state, or when you call it the Illuminati, or when you call it the New World Order, I believe that these are purposefully unhelpful and purposefully undescriptive terms that the FBI and the police, they don't have a department at doing something about the deep state. They can't do anything about the deep state. But when you call the problem intergenerational organized crime, then there is a expectation that they would investigate this and figure out where these missing millions, these trillions and trillions of dollars are going, or why we're handing trillions of dollars to private banks and private companies through the TARP and the TOLF and the bailouts and the COVID bailouts and COVID stimulus. And so, we do good scholarship. In May of 2020, we did what I thought was a very, very well, researched expose of who's behind the COVID that you can find at government-scam.com/pandemic, where we found massive evidence of foreknowledge and disaster capitalism and where people are benefiting from, these policies that are being forced upon them. And our thesis with the COVID is it was the manufactured, engineered reason for the bailouts. So we're going to spend hundreds of billions of dollars making it, with our monopoly media system and with our, captured regulatory agency, the CDC, and the CDC's hierarchical control of information down through the state health departments and the county health departments. And we're going to make it seem like that there's a pandemic, so we can hand trillions of dollars to private banks and private companies. So we spent hundreds of billions to make trillions. And the other part of the thesis is I think we're at the end of the dollar Ponzi scheme. I don't think they were able to fund the treasury market. The Federal Reserve is prohibited by law, by the Federal Reserve Act, from participating and buying U.S. treasuries at the treasury auctions. And I think that we've gotten to the point of where the jig is up, and that not enough, that they're having to borrow so much money to keep this government going every year that there's just not enough legitimate investable, capital that's willing to put its, to be locked up for 10 years or 20 years in an investment that pays less than the rate of inflation. Okay. Investing in an organization that's $29 trillion in debt with, depending on who you ask, 100 to 200 plus trillion in unfunded liabilities. Yeah, I want to invest in that organization. And so I think they just got to the end, that we're getting to the end of the dollar Ponzi scheme. And so the COVID allowed, so now, I tell the story, and you can take a look at government-scam/pandemic. But the Fed began getting caught in December and January and February, not buying treasuries at the auction, but buying them one day later from the primary dealers. And so I'm an ex-Wall Street guy. I used to build networks for market data, trading floor technology for Wall Street. And the Fed's, the Treasury sells its bills, bonds, and notes through an auction process run by about 20 financial institutions, ranging from Goldman Sachs to JP Morgan to the usual suspects on Wall Street, where they make obscene profits in dealing in and reselling the government's debt. And they have an auction process that I think has been rigged for years. Paul Craig Roberts, the former assistant Treasury Secretary and Wall Street Journal editorial page editor, called them out in 2014 when we were expected to believe that tiny little Belgium bought, I think it was like $140 billion worth of treasuries in a single month. And so, I think that they've been, printing money to loan the money to the government, to, circulating it through front companies in the Cayman Islands and Belgium and other places. And I think it just got to the point where the scam was becoming, too apparent. And as I mentioned, in December and January and February of 2020, Chris Martenson, Zero Hedge, began, noticing and writing about the fact that the Fed was buying treasuries, not at the auction, but one day later from these primary dealers. And so, they're buying billions and billions of dollars worth of treasuries after the primary dealer held on to it, for one day so that it wouldn't be obviously illegal. But that's the level of criminality. Yeah, that's the level of criminality that's going on, in Washington and Wall Street. And so I think, now after the COVID, after this naturally occurring disaster that nobody could have foreseen, now the Fed has the ability, because of, who could have seen it's it's an emergency natural thing. So now the Fed is openly participating in the Treasury market. And so, this has been, the same way that, 9/11 was an insurance job and a gold heist and used to take us, to wage wars that we needed to be in. They did a whole bunch of things. They're doing a whole bunch of things with the COVID. Part of it is a bank robbery. Part of it is economic warfare on the American people. We're going to bankrupt independent wealth, independent restaurants, independent coffee shops, independent hotels, independent businesses, so we can come in with, disaster capitalism and chain restaurants, chain coffee shops, chain hotels. And we identify some of the people. Bill Ackman of Pershing Capital Management that supposedly made, over $2 billion with a reported $22 million in hedges. So when the market tanked due to COVID, he was positioned to make $2 billion, almost like he knew it was going to happen. And then when you take a look at his portfolio, it's almost like he knew somebody was about to, wipe out all the independent restaurants, coffee shops, and hotel chains, because he was the biggest investor in Restaurant Brands International, which owns 26,000 Burger Kings, Tim Hortons, and Popeyes. And he was a big investor in Chipotle, and he was a big investor in Starbucks, and he was a big investor in Hilton Hotels. And it's almost like he knew something was about to go and wipe out all the independents. And here he comes, well positioned with deep-pocketed bankster finance, chain restaurants, chain hotels, chain coffee shops to make money over and above the $2 billion plus that he made by predicting something that nobody could have known was going to happen. See, Dag and Brandon, there was this wet market in China, and there was like a bat, and the bat bit a human or something, and then now the Treasury gets to participate, or the Fed gets to participate in the Treasury market.
So, it's funny. Like there was a lot of politicians who sold a lot of stock before, a lot of like the lockdowns went on and everything, and it's just so blatantly obvious. And like that's why I just don't understand why people can keep like voting for known liars, because they're just openly like terrible. But so what are we to do as the little guys, the independent business owners, man? What are our options?
Well, so, the other thing that we're doing at the Art of Liberty Foundation is we're trying to figure out how to win the whole thing. How do you, widely expose the illegitimacy of government, and how do you expose the open criminality of government in an era of monopolized media and algorithmic censorship of the DARPA internet. And so our solution, the book, Government, the Biggest Scam in History Exposed, was actually designed to wake people up, to take them from kind of 0 to 60 in the shortest amount of time possible. And so it's designed for visual learners. It uses a variety of different learning techniques, from kind of revelation of the method to exposing that the government's using the exact same playbook as the Nazis, the Soviets and the East Germans. We're making what was invisible, now visible through visualization. I gave the example of, trying to explain to your friends and relatives that there's 6 companies. They may or may not believe you, but if you show them a media ownership chart, all of a sudden they're like, holy crap, there's 6 companies running hundreds of subsidiaries to give everybody the illusion that there's all these information sources. And so the book has been designed for widespread distribution. And I think that the way to get around the censorship is the brute force attack on censorship. It's to go door to door in a single state. A single low population state. I think the leading candidates are New Hampshire, because of the work of the Free State Project. Wyoming, because they've got less than 600,000 people in the entire state. Idaho, because it's already the great redoubt of people that know that the government is illegitimate and criminal, and it has a low population. In Arizona, and I think those 4 states are the easiest to potentially free. But our plan and what we're trying to raise money for is to test dropping 100,000 copies of the book, 100,000 of our credit card size 16 gigabit flash drive that we call the Liberator, that backs up the book with all of the evidence and the documents and an assortment of books and documentaries and short videos and memes and truth music. And a documentary, a to be determined documentary. But we want to get around this algorithmic censorship of the internet and this monopolization of the media by just going door to door in a book that, once you pick it up and you see the images and you see the memes, you're hooked. I mean, it's hard to put down. And then backed up by all the evidence on the flash drive, and then a DVD documentary that will kind of break down the specifics. We want to drive people to town hall meetings where we essentially say, hey, we've been getting robbed. There's the media that you've seen is being, the information has been controlled to you. We're having a town hall meeting. Bring people to town hall meetings. They find out, oh my God, look, here's all my friends and neighbors. I didn't know that Bob knew about this. I didn't know that, and then introduce them into the Liberty, movement and the Liberty organizations already in that state. And in New Hampshire, there's an absolute ton of them because of the work of the Free State Project. And so we want to pump those up until we either achieve a secession or we've just got widespread civil disobedience to where 15, 20, 25% of the population realizes the government's illegitimate and just says, we're not going along with it. We're not paying our taxes. We're not withholding taxes from our employees. We're not listening to the order followers anymore. And then when the order followers come out, they will be dealt with in a much different way once the majority or a significant, minority of the population understand that the system is illegitimate and that the order followers, have been tricked into shaving their heads and wearing costumes, and people are going to deal with the order followers much different once they realize how bad the order followers have been chumped. And then I think the order followers, once they figure out how they've been chumped and how they've been tricked into robbing their friends and neighbors and raising revenue on their neighbors and just committing, using violence on peaceful people for an artificially indoctrinated religion, I think they're going to be the ones that are going to serve up the most amount of retribution to the people that made them look so silly in front of their friends and neighbors.
It's the least they can do.
Yeah, hopefully, right?
Civil disobedience. That's that word I was trying to think of, Brandon. I could not come up with it earlier. You organized. Yeah, I knew it'd come to me, but apparently not. You organized some civil disobedient type of or helped organize activities here this summer for COVID. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So I was in California when the COVID hit. I was actually in Guatemala when the COVID hit, but I flew back to California to meet with some donors to the Art of Liberty Foundation. And I was in Santa Cruz with our mutual friend, David Rodriguez, who runs the Gatto Project and who is a well-known liberty activist. And, one night we got invited over to a get together. I want to say this was in kind of March of 2020, into a get together of about 10 people in the Santa Cruz area that didn't really believe what they were being told about the COVID. They had no idea what they were getting themselves into by inviting us over. But David and I had just gone into Santa Clara Hospital, which was supposedly the epicenter of COVID in California.
Let me guess, it was
LA Times.
It was empty.
Not only was it empty, it was so empty that I couldn't believe it. Like as much as I already knew that this system is fake, you really had to have been there to realize how fake it was. Empty tents, empty waiting rooms. The hospital staff themselves are openly speculating that the whole thing was a hoax. I actually go through the testing processes about 25 times that I've had to wear a mask over the whole year and a half. Walk through, get the guy doing the testing inside, take off the mask. I explain to him I'm an investigative journalist and we're trying to figure out what's going on with the COVID. And this guy looks scared. He realizes that he's, not doing something he shouldn't be doing, but he was honest with me. I asked him, a number of very, very direct pointed questions. I said, are you guys, doing the testing? And at that point, they weren't doing any testing at all. They'd only tested 10 people the day before. I asked him, I said, are you guys seeing any more death or disease than the usual and customary seasonal influenzas, pneumonias, etc.? He said no. And so we knew for a fact, and that's the epicenter of COVID in California. If you know anything about, Santa Clara and in the San Francisco area, there's a huge Chinese community, a huge expatriate Chinese community. They come back and forth for the Chinese New Year. If this thing had really started in China, besides, that is one of that would have been the epicenter of COVID in California, but instead you had, tents flapping in the wind and a bunch of people pretending there was a pandemic. He then went to Dominican Hospital in Santa Cruz. We found empty tents, empty waiting rooms. After that video went viral, they took down the tents the next day because it just looked so stupid having all these tents out there. Since then I've talked to dozens of different doctors, nurses, paramedics from around the country, and I've not found anybody that is experiencing pandemic conditions in their hospital at all. All different states, all different things. I've talked to emergency room doctors. I've talked to primary care physicians. I've talked to nurses. I've not experienced anybody that's experiencing pandemic conditions. So we knew it was fake. And so we started with those 10 people, and they wanted to do something. They wanted to end this tyranny and expose this. And so we began getting organized. And then the next week we had 20 people. And the week after that, we had 37 people, and we were marching through Santa Cruz, bullhorning, "It's just the flu, people. It's just the flu. COVID is the manufactured, engineered reason for the bailouts. It's a robbery. They spent billions to make trillions. You're being robbed." The week after that, we had over almost 400 people in a Facebook group, and we began regularly turning out 60, 70 plus people at peaceful civil disobedience events. We would do beach reopenings. They were, in Santa Cruz, they were saying you can't be on the beach from 10 o'clock until 5 o'clock because that's when the COVID is active. And so we'd all go out there at 12 o'clock, and there'd be 60, 70 of us, and we'd all go, "We're reopening the beach." And then we'd all walk onto the beach at the same time, and we'd have a beach party. And we'd have surfing, and we'd have badminton, and we'd have drum circles, and it was all ages, and we tried to make it fun to resist. We would reopen beaches. So we cut the locks off of, they'd lock up the beaches, and we not only would we just cut off the lock, but we would actually cut off the U-bolt that held the lock to the post, so they just could put another lock on it. We would have Liberty bonfires. And we just began making it fun to resist. Those efforts are still going on to this day. And Santa Cruz, California is probably literally one of the leading, places where the population is effectively organized and fighting back against the tyranny of the lockdowns and the mask mandates and everything else that's going on in California. I give huge props to David Rodriguez and the crew that is fighting the good fight. Every single week they have events. Every single week they have movies on the beach where they have a giant inflatable screen, and they'll show documentaries and short videos and things like that to bring the community together and educate them. There's people that pass out thousands and thousands of flyers. There's people that do Liberty bonfires. And so they've literally since they've kept it going since I left, and they've done dozens and dozens, if not 100 plus events, over the past year, and they're having fun doing it. They're having a blast. I had people tell me they're like, while half the country is cowering in their apartments, afraid to leave. I had one person go, my social life has actually improved since the COVID. I've actually met more people and had more fun than I did last year, and nobody's wearing the masks. And I've been in crowds, I could just tell, I've been through the New York City subway without a mask. I've been in crowds of thousands of people. We spoke, David and I both spoke on the steps of the California State Capitol in Sacramento to crowds of thousands and thousands of people, where the only people wearing masks were the media and the police. And there was no super spreader event. Nobody ever came down with COVID. We have a huge data set. We got a huge data sample, right? Across multiple states. I'm not, if this thing is as lethal and as communicable as they're telling us, if you're not going to get it in these crowds, these riots, I think the media may be lying to us.
Well, what the scientists or health experts said, like, oh, well, it was important enough that it's okay to venture out into the crowds because racial injustice is so whatever. It's just obvious. It's crazy. So you were at a Float Fest with us actually, and that was pretty fun. That was when I went like 4 or 5 days without seeing a single mask. Man, it was crazy. What did you think of Float Fest? Did you have a good time?
I had a real good time, and I love going to these Liberty events. And I was doing Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock this morning, and we were talking about the fact that I think that the voluntarist libertarian liberty movement is the fastest growing movement on the planet. And I think it's been a beach ball that they've been hiding denigrating, but I'm seeing these events. This was, Float Fest was a first year event that had 200, around 200 people at it. The Jackalope Freedom Festival last August, in the middle of a pandemic, tripled in size from 200 people to 600 people. The Porcupine Freedom Festival in New Hampshire in June, they're expecting 2,000, up from 1,200 last year. And so, the Liberty is exciting. It is hot. People are like, people are finding out about it. And when they come to our events, they're having a blast, and they don't have to wear a mask, and nobody ever gets the virus, and nobody ever gets sick, and everybody has a good time. And, they're encountering speakers like Etienne de la Boetie2, and they're reading books like Government, the Biggest Scam in History. I got the Government, the Biggest Scam in History flying off the shelves. I've sold thousands and thousands of copies over the past couple of months. And so, more and more people are figuring out that the government is illegitimate and that it's organized crime. And, I see us winning this thing. I see us winning this thing in the end. There's just no way to block the signal. I thank you guys for what you're doing. It really is. It's 1,000 flowers blooming. And, it's podcasts like this and audiences like this that are allowing us to reach all of these different, groups of people that we wouldn't. We're getting around the algorithmic censorship of the media. We're getting around the monopolization of the media because of, the work that you and Brandon are doing to be able to, to create an audience and to be able to give them voices that they're not going to hear on the monopoly media. And so that's the reason we're winning. There's absolutely no way to stop the signal. And so now all we got to do is free one state, just go door to door, make a huge effort in one state to expose it, and then you won't be able to hide it from the other states. It becomes absolutely impossible to hide from the other. New Hampshire's seceding. They say it's organized crime. What? It's just impossible for the rest of the country to organize. And then if we can expose the illegitimacy of government in the United States, I think government falls all around the world. It's not us against Russia or us against China. It's the government of the United States against the population of the United States. It's the government of China against the population of China, the government of Russia against the population of Russia. And they're just menacing each other's populations with the specter of war between them to drive everybody for the security of government. And once you expose that all of these governments are illegitimate, they're all using the exact same playbook of techniques, and it's a playbook, and we make that clear in the book. Well, once the population figures out how the magician does the trick, it's very, very hard to be fooled by the magician again. And so that's what we're doing. We're exposing that there's a man behind the media, behind the curtain in the media. We're exposing the illegitimacy of government. And once you realize that government is illegitimate, very few people, maybe your mom is the exception, go back to getting chumped, and so it's a revolution that's only going in one direction. And so we're going to win. I don't know how long it's going to take us, but we're going to expose this system, and there's some people that are going to have to answer for their crimes.
All right, let's take a quick second to shout out Agorist Acre Seeds. Agoristacres.com stocks a variety of seeds for your garden or homestead. They also have really cool packaging instead of those silly paper envelopes.
Buy seeds with crypto, support the counter economy, and become self-sustaining today. Agorist Acres offers fast shipping so you can get started right away.
Make sure you use code Nexus10 at the checkout for 10% off of your orders. Also, they will donate a portion of the sale to Agorist Nexus, helping to bring you all the great content you expect. And all right, let's get on with it.
Shit, yeah. We're coming up on time here. Do you got anything you want to add, Brandon?
Man, I pretty much agreed with everything you said. I appreciate you coming on. Yeah, and I've been saying the same thing that COVID is just a scapegoat for not only bad economic policies, but the 20 other things that that they
So many
want to
people get-
implement. You know,
Yeah.
so, and
So many
there's
people get what they want out of this.
yeah, there's like 20 agendas that they can launch off with this one thing. And yeah, I think you guys might have started off the you and David Rodriguez might have started off the Film Your Hospital. I remember there was like a hashtag Film Your Hospital that was going around, which was cool. And even my hospital, the hospital near me, was emptier than it had ever been in the history of that hospital. It's pretty big, you know, it's pretty busy hospital. But during the start of the pandemic, like March, April, May, it was even quieter than it was before. So yeah, I appreciate your work on that for sure. And you were saying something earlier that I wanted to ask you, but I never got the chance, and that was that you were saying, you know, it's not the Illuminati, it's not this group, it's not that group, and there's a group behind it. Which group were you exactly talking about there?
Well, you know, I call it intergenerational organized crime because it's people that are willing to use violence and deception on others to steal money. And so I'm not saying that there wasn't a Bavarian Illuminati. I think there probably was, there may still be. What I'm saying is that if you really want to expose the system, that you've got to use,
we have to label it the right way.
Intergenerational organized crime.
Yeah.
Well,
You got to label it the right way.
I like how you use intergenerational, because that's a big thing, is that it's not like one person deciding that this is going to happen in the next few years. These are plans that are laid out over the course of decades, or 100+ years. So it really is an intergenerational thing, and it's just so much bigger, and it's just so intertwined in every facet of government that it can be easy to miss, I guess, until you see it, and then it's so hard to miss.
So once they gave the Fed, so the money center banks created the Federal Reserve, to backstop the banking system, to be able to create money out of thin air using fractional reserve banking. And so once they gave themselves that ability in 1913, and they had the ability to create money out of thin air, then they've used the exorbitant profits and used that capability to fund these monopoly corporations, a handful of monopoly corporations in each kind of sector with unlimited capital to be able to consolidate their own and monopolize their own industries. And so they typically leave 2 or 3 companies there, so it's not obvious that it's a pure monopoly. So they'll leave, Verizon and AT&T. They'll leave Walmart and Target. They'll leave Dick's and Sports Authority. They'll leave the Republicans and the Democrats. They'll leave Office Depot and Staples. They'll leave, and so these companies have been funded with this unlimited capital to make it look like that you've got the choice. And they've got so much money that they just buy up anybody that's not playing along, and that's the way that it's gone. And those are all the companies that are participating in the lockdowns. Those are the companies that are forcing everybody to wear masks and forcing their employees to wear masks. And it's the chain stores, it's the chain restaurants, it's it's this top-down monopolization of control that they got because the analogy I use is, imagine you're playing Monopoly and the banker is cheating, and the guy that's the banker, he's reaching under the table and he's taking $500 bills out of the box. And at the end of the game, who owns every single thing on the board and who are renters and debtors? And that's what they've done, is they have taken their little fiat paper tickets that they create out of thin air, and they're using them to buy up real companies, plant, property, equipment, to monopolize the world. And so if you want to break the chains of slavery, don't do business with these monopoly corporations. Don't consume their media. There's we could do a whole show on solutions. But number one, turn off the television, turn off figure out who's lying to you, get your news from the developing alternative media. Don't give your money to Time Warner Cable or Cox. give your money to Dag and Brandon and Agorist Nexus and support you on Patreon and support the authentic voices of the alternative media. And then we can create the world that we want as soon as we quit giving our money to Amazon. And I don't want to give it away. One of the big secrets we break in the book is that the big secret of Amazon is if you spin the Z, it turns into an S, and you can get anything you want from a Mason in 2 days with free shipping, but you shouldn't if you can avoid it. And so, they knew when they released the internet to the public, and they had the internet for a decade before they gave it to us. Decades, really. I've got, I talk about, I've got network maps of the ARPA internet. In 1974, they had dozens of universities and research and military research institutions on the internet in 1974, dozens on 1974. So they had the internet a long time before they released it to the public. By the time they released it to the public, they had already figured out which companies they were going to overcapitalize to control books. Because if you want to control information, you've got to control books and retail and social media and search engines. And so these are essentially DARPA front companies where they've been given, their early access to internet technologies to be able to dominate their competition, funded with unlimited bankster money to control their little, slice of the information food chain. And this program is benefiting them. So they've launched this COVID scam, which is a Rockefeller Future, Rockefeller Foundation future visioning program called Lockstep that actually still was on the Rockefeller Foundation website a while back, but it's the Lockstep program, and it's making their front companies like A. Mason, Amazon, billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars at the expense of independent restaurants, mom and pop restaurants, neighborhood restaurants. They're bankrupting independent wealth because they don't want you to do well. They don't want you to have money to oppose them. And so break the chains. Don't do business with Amazon. Don't do business with Walmart. Don't do business with, every once in a while you absolutely have to. I understand that. I absolutely have to do business with them every once in a while as well, because that's the only place you can get certain things now. But anytime you can avoid it, do business with your neighborhood, your neighborhood restaurants, your local restaurants, buy local, go to the farmer's market, spend your money. You get to vote every single day with your dollar versus, voting in rigged elections on unauditable black box voting machines and central tabulators. So that's just some strategies for success. You can get the book at government-scam.com, and you can find out all about the Art of Liberty Foundation there as well. There's a tab there for the Art of Liberty Foundation, and Dag mentioned that we've got our executive summary. We're in the middle of a capital raise, and so we're looking, for some heavy hitters that want to see a voluntarist think tank and want to expose government as the organized crime system it is, and expose the criminality of what's going on in Washington, D.C. So if anybody can introduce us, we'd appreciate it. And government-scam.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. And shop at Agorist Nexus too, guys. We've got a full directory of independent businesses there. And shout out to everyone who's listed on our website. Really appreciate that. And what else we got, Dag? You got a quote?
I did not have one prepared. You got one ready? I assume not, since you're asking me.
We'll have to edit this out here, but
Yeah, sure.
I'll throw in a quote.
Do you have one?
Yes. Voltaire said that paper money always returns to its intrinsic value of zero.
That's a great quote. Agorist Nexus out.
Peace.